Vander, and you're watching a production produced by myself, which I call The Heartbeat of Guilford. Thank you for watching.
Voter, the benefit of having somebody who's an expert look through your equipment with you, because you have to be there with us to be sure everything's okay, so that if there's something missing or something isn't working, you have the opportunity before you need it out on the water to have everything right.
And then, or you can go to the website, either Google Temple Beth Tikva or go to Temple Beth Tikva nurseryschool.org.
.org.
And so that's how they would reach or get more information.
Yeah, we love to have visitors, so call and come by for a visit. We have an outstanding playground as well, so it's a nice time of the year if you want to come by to visit and get some information. We love to show off the school, and in particular the playground, the Mary L. Blank Playground, which is, again, our commitment to nature and outdoor learning.
So we the preamble. Special thanks to John Billings, Gabe, and Amanda for helping out in the studio today and with the cameras and the switcher and the like. And today we're talking about why children aren't learning. And my guest today is Bill Quirk, or William G. Quirk, PhD. Right? Welcome, Bill.
Thank you
very much for
Thanks
coming.
for having me.
You know, the way I got started with the thought of having a conversation with you is I had noticed that your articles in the newspaper
more advanced than the average home user is going to need to use it for. But say you're running a business out of your home, or you don't have a secretary to do a lot of stuff for you. Trying to work with this kind of stuff can save you a lot of time.
And then your last one you have is synchronizing with PDA. What is PDA?
Oh, that's like a smartphone or a personal digital assistant, a Palm Pilot, if they even still have those.
Personal digital assistant. We got to remember what all these little things are. All right, let's see what the next slide looks like. Just double click it, I think. I deleted the one that had the references in it. So let's see. What
I think we're talking about tasks. Oh, we kind of touched it.
Hi, this is Bob Vander, and you're watching another production of The Heartbeat of Guilford. If I knew what day it was, what is it, September 29th? September 29th of 2011. She just rolls it up.
My house, she rolls up her
And you
quilt
stick stuff
pieces.
inside there?
Yes, you can put some of your supplies
I
inside.
hear it. I hear the
Something
jiggle
in
in there.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Scissors, needles, thread.
I hope she doesn't watch this program.
It won't be a surprise.
It won't be a surprise. Well, nothing's a surprise to her anyway, so.
Lots of wonderful handcrafted items, and then we'll also have some fabric, anything
So
like
when you
that.
quilt, you're actually, that's the final putting together of those three layers, right?
Yes.
And there's hand quilting and there's machine quilting.
That's right.
So you hand quilt means lots of people sitting there. In the old days, that was the way, my wife's grandmother used to tell me that at night, her husband and them would talk with the family and quilt as they were doing. And they kind of like put the things together. He would quilt with her and they would put things together. And that's how they had a conversation and you know whatever at the same time. Then the other thing is this machine quilting. I brought something for my wife once to this person's house, and they had this massive thing and they go
Yes.
and that's how, so that's machine quilting, right?
But that's the extreme of machine quilting.
okay.
I just have a regular sewing machine.
Oh,
and
with a
I-
big table,
I
and you
quilt
kind
on
of,
that.
oh, and then you just
Right,
go
and move it around,
move it
in the
around
machine,
and everything
right.
else.
But the long arm is a wonderful way.
In planning, you have to plan a strategy on how you're going to accomplish your objectives. It helps you with your judgment skills. It helps you with logic and analytical skills. It increases your social skills, as we mentioned before. And this is a phenomenal thing. It levels the playing field among kids. You know when you have people playing sports and you have people with different levels of talent as far as their physical abilities, and people that are mentally challenged and so forth. But at the bridge table, it levels these skills. Everybody's about the same level. Everybody's dealing with the same set of cards and everything else. And that is very helpful for students who want to fit in. Here's a couple testimonials from students who were playing bridge. Auxiliary, and you might be interested in joining. And for that, if you're interested, you can call the number that is on the screen, 453-5031. And that would connect you to a local business in town that has members. The commander, he's the commander, right?
Yes, the flotilla
The
commander.
flotilla commander operates the business along with yourself.
Right.
And they'll give you any information you want about the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And our guest today is Ann Duhame, and we're talking about vessel checks. And I guess another part of your mission is training, right?
Teaching.
Teaching. Okay.
Lots of teaching. We work with both the Guilford and Madison Park and Recreation departments and teach in their programs. We teach an About Boating Safely class, generally 5 or 6 times during the spring and into the early part of the summer.
So wait a minute. 5 or 6 times you go to the course, or 5 or 6 times you offer the course?
5 or 6 times we offer the course.
Oh, okay.
So
And how
we're-
long is the course?
The course is 8 hours, and that's a state of Connecticut requirement, that you be in class for 8 hours.
All in one shot, or?
Oh, no, we prefer to do it over 2 evenings. We find that if we do it, say
Everybody falls asleep, yeah.
maybe 2 Tuesday nights or 2 Thursday nights in a row, everybody is able to retain.
So you imply that memorizing mathematic tables, multiplication tables, is not fun?
No, there's, you know, you have to,
drudgery.
in math, it starts at the traditional model. You start off with addition tables, subtraction tables, multiplication tables, and division tables, and it's very important.
Band also.
Oh, he does?
Right. So
Okay.
jazz is something he's been studying, but I think for both of us, playing regularly at that restaurant has
Well,
really
he
helped
seems
us.
to know those charts. I
Well, he
mean,
knows them.
Yeah.
And he still studies. He takes lessons from Artie Dixon. And
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the bass guy?
Dave is a professional bass player.
Yeah.
And he teaches at middle school. up
Say
in
his
the-
last name. So
Dave Daddario.
Dave did that.
Dave Daddario teaches at a middle school and up in the New London area.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dave is kind of the rock for us. And he can hold the beat down. And,
Yeah, he's
and
on it,
great.
yeah.
He's right on. He knows every tune. Dave knows probably 10,000 songs, no lie. And so it's been really great for me to have Dave playing. So the three of us are more or less the core, although I will periodically, depending on who the guest is, have somebody else play bass or drums or both. I think it's good for the community and for the people that have been supporting us coming there to see different musicians. And sometimes I'm not there.
Now I saw your daughter sing a few tunes every
Yeah.
once in a while.
That's how we
What-
got started with
Yeah.
Fire Attack.
So, and now what's her deal? What does she do?
My daughter graduated Georgetown University,
Right.
and she sang in the Georgetown.
So, again, this is Bob Vander. This production is produced by myself. Any opinions expressed are mine or our guests alone and have nothing to do with Guilford Community Television. And I thank you for watching.
I'd like to thank you all for coming. Bob's family members, First Selectman Mazza, who, by the way, was GCTV's accountant before he was First Selectman. Members of the GCTV Executive Committee, board members, Father Shanley and Smith, thank you for coming. Before we get started, I've got a little bit of business. This is our regular board meeting, and I've got a little business. I've got some correspondence. It's dated August 8th, 2012. It's from a Mr. Bob Vander, and he says, I can no longer handle my responsibilities. It's at 9:19 a.m. He says, I can no longer handle my responsibilities. Please accept my resignation. Well, I haven't gotten around to replying to that yet, so I'm going to take this opportunity and say, well, sorry, Bob, no. We won't accept your resignation. You're just going to have to stick around here with us in this studio, and to make sure of it, we're having this dedication tonight. Now, you know, I was kind of a stranger to Bob. I only knew him 7 or 8 years, unlike many of the rest of you. So I think, I'll say this, though. None of us would be standing here today if it was not for Bob. And that's literally true. This floor, for example, that we're standing on, we installed at Bob's insistence. There were a bunch of us who were willing to put down either plywood or linoleum, but Bob said, no, we have to have this bamboo floor. And of course, Bob is the one who found this place for us. And I don't know how many people saw it before we got in here. I can tell you it wasn't pretty. But Bob had the vision. He saw in his mind what you're seeing today. And not only was that true of this studio, I was talking to Mary Jane a little bit earlier. Bob's vision of this studio goes all the way back to Adams Middle School when GCTV was a closet. I think you told me it was actually an abandoned lavatory.
It was definitely
Okay. So from an abandoned bathroom in Adams Middle School more than 30 years ago, Bob envisioned what you see here. And even as he was battling his final illness, he oversaw the construction and the move, and he brought in contractors. And so you're really looking, as you look around you, you're really looking at Bob's actual handiwork. Now, the other thing that he did is he got a whole bunch of us to help. That's the other thing he was really, really good at. You know, I've heard some of the old stories. All you had to do was walk into his old business, the video library, and the next thing you knew, you had a microphone in your hand, and you were out interviewing town officials or filming a parade. You know, in the brief 8 years that I knew Bob, he had some famous first words. They were, what do you think of this idea? And then he'd never let go. Never let go. He would just keep coming and coming and coming. That's true of the studio. We looked at so many different places. Tony took us to see so many different places, and Bob from the start had his eye on this place here. Well, look where we are. So I'm going to call up some other people who have worked with Bob, someone from Mike Graziano, who's on the GCTV board, Tony Fapiano, who in some ways is the face of GCTV, and he's one of our producers, and Shannon Gale, who's on our staff. And I'm going to ask each of you to just give a brief recollection of Bob and his role in GCTV. And so, Mike, why don't you start?
Anybody watch Long Island Medium? It's a great show. It's about a woman who can actually talk to the dead. And she'll be at a gas station and someone next door, and she'll start talking to them and saying, well, did you just lose your mother? and she nails everything. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And after watching that show, I know Bob is here right now. No question about it. He's here looking at us. After 20, 30, almost 30 years, I've known Bob. I think the first experience I remember when I was working at Radio Shack, and he came in and said, I want to hook up this camera and I want to run 100 feet of wire. Can I do that? And I said, yeah, you can. I showed him the connectors, whatever, and he was all happy and, oh, hey, great, So he was hooking up one I didn't realize at that time what he was doing, but I found out later he was hooking up the first 3-camera shoot that we ever had. And he did it all by himself. Now, if you look at the cameras here, these are small cameras. The other cameras used to be big. The tripods used to be heavy. They used to have big TVs, and he'd load it all into his van and then go to a band concert. And he'd set up all the tripods and the cameras. And I think if the kids will probably remember going to a few of those events and helping him, because I remember they were maybe 12 or 13 at the time. Okay. And he set all this stuff up, and he'd do the whole recording. And it was his whole sense of getting that show, get it on the air, get it on GCTV, so everybody can enjoy it, not just the few people that were there. I think David's going to be reading the proclamation that. No, go ahead. Okay, because there's some of the stuff that's in there that I don't want to repeat it. So. I think one of the things that Bob, from the very, very start of GCTV, was that he felt that everybody in the community should know what's going on. It shouldn't be just for a select few that know what happened at the Board of Selectmen meeting or what happened at the Board of Finance meeting. He always felt that the whole town should be able to just tune in and look at it. And he went out and bought equipment to get that done. And he actually did it for quite a few years, all volunteer. So I guess, what GCTV is right now is really what Bob had started 30-something years ago. So anyway, thanks, Bob.
If it's okay with you guys, I've prepared some written stuff that I'm going to read. It definitely is my privilege to be here tonight. And it's no secret that Bob was high on everybody's list as far as community volunteers in the town of Guilford. We're so fortunate to have so many volunteers in the town, but Bob is certainly way up there at the very top. Some of the things that have been mentioned already. I think Bob's longtime involvement with GCTV was his way of substantial community service. I first met Bob as a customer when he was the owner of the video store called the Video Library back in the mid to late 80s. One day he mentioned a fairly new fledgling organization to me called Guilford Community Television. And back then, GCTV was nothing but a non-entity. I mean, nobody watched it, nobody knew what it was. It was really nothing. Next thing I know, he stuck a microphone in my hand, and 30 years later, here we are. But that 25, almost 30-year relationship that we had was tremendous. I mean, the relationship with Bob, has already been alluded to, is that he was very good at getting the best out of you, getting you involved, and just that type of guy. What you all know that perhaps some of the people watching at home are not aware of is that this is a completely volunteer organization, with the exception of one part-time staff person. While GCTV has had many, many volunteers over the years, none have devoted more time and energy to the evolution and development of public access TV in the town of Guilford. He has served continuously on the board, as was mentioned, and a number of technology committees, and some of the committees were a committee of one. He just did what he had to do, and he got it done. Back in the early days of GCTV, public access TV in Guilford consisted of one VHS camera, and a broadcast system that has already been mentioned that originated from an abandoned lavatory at Adams Middle School. And the studio was a table and chairs in the cafeteria. And back then, at the very, very beginning, as he did all the way through his involvement here, he produced a program in a series called The Heartbeat of Guilford. Once or twice a week, he would invite any and all nonprofit organizations or people of interest to come down to Adams Middle School to be interviewed. And I got to tell you, the number of guests for the Heartbeat of Guilford was never ending. It was one after another, 10, 20 a week sometimes. The guests on the Heartbeat of Guilford would come, they would discuss their particular fundraiser or whatever event they had coming up, and GCTV would broadcast it out to the community. But Bob had a bigger vision for Guilford Community Television, of what it could be. Today, in part because of the relentless effort of Bob Vander, GCTV is now located in this state-of-the-art studio, a huge difference from the early Adams Middle School days. Bob's philosophy, as Mike mentioned, was to make information available to everyone through the best public access television that money could buy. Well, it's happening. And we are the beneficiaries of that vision and hard work. As we approach the one-year anniversary of Bob's passing, we all realize that that has left a huge void in the GCTV family, obviously the Vander family. So I'm so pleased to hear, I was so pleased to hear in the beginning that you were going to be dedicating the studio in Bob's memory. In my opinion, there is no GCTV ever, past or present, more deserving of the honor. So I congratulate the board of GCTV to continue the work that Bob has started and has been the motivating factor for a large number of years, long number of years. And I just think it's a great thing that you're doing, and I'm so pleased that it's happening. I know that those that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years also feel the same way. So with that, I thank you very much. Thank you, David.
Any of you who knows me knows that I don't like to stand up in front of crowds and speak. It's not one of my strong points, but you have to sit through it, so that's okay. My name is Jeff Lincoln. I determine who sleeps in the Lincoln bedroom. Oh no, wrong place. Anyway, I've known Bob since about 1976. I knew him before GCTV. I went into the library, and I tried to argue with him that his prices were too high. And he said, he's the only way he would make enough money to stay in business. And I said, but there's a guy down the street who's taking less money than you are, who's providing service. And I went there the next day, and the guy had pulled up stakes and left. So I went back to Bob, and I said, Bob, I figured out how you can make money. But he never did take my advice. There's so many people that are involved in Bob and GCTV that almost everybody here is a generation down, or a generation 2 down, or even a generation 4 down. I just thought I'd mention some of the oldest people in the whole group. There was George Norton, Gingy Barber, Phyllis Nominson, Gay Hodge. If I miss anybody, it's just through inadvertence. Tony Papiano, Mike Graziano, Keith Bishop. Then the list goes on ad infinitum. It's not hard getting volunteers. It's hard to get volunteers to do what you want them to do when you want to do it. And that's what Bob was very good at. The bathroom at Adams School also housed a gurney bed. One of these, you see the EMTs taking somebody out of the building. And that's what we put our equipment on. So we were mobile to the extent that we were at the end of a long extension cord, but at least we could move the stuff a little bit. And under that, we produced some wonderful shows and some not so wonderful shows. But all of them had the stamp of Bob on them. You could almost tell by looking at his programs which ones he were before said I'm a producer. And he got people to do better than their best. So that's what I remember most of all. Even when he was in his final battle with his injury, with his sickness, he came out to the Gables where my mother lived and did a piano piece and stayed out there and did that sort of stuff. He just was forever busy and fruitful, and I'm going to miss him a lot.
So anybody who's actually been trained by me, I usually tell people if they're going to be on camera, don't read from a script. I'm officially breaking that rule. I want to make sure I get this right. I've had the pleasure of working with Bob a little over 9 years. In that time, I worked with an individual who, by trade and general interest, made it his business to keep a finger on the pulse of technology. And he loved it all, the old, the new, the good, the bad. He had a lot of knowledge, but what he did not know he figured out as he went along. It was all part of the experiment, and he had a good time doing it. It is in that attitude and philosophy that he shared with me as I stepped into the new role of understanding the inner workings of technology, not just creating videos with it. It is in that spirit and Bob's memory that GCTV dedicates our studio in his name and invites the Guilford community to explore technology and media production with a sense of wonder and curiosity and have a blast doing it.
Now, we have a number, we heard from Jeff, and we have some other founders here. Where's Bob Shepard? And is Keith Bishop here? Bob, do you want to say anything?
I just echo what everybody else has said. It was wonderful working with Bob. And I certainly agree that what we have today, we wouldn't have had without him. And when you talk about the abandoned boys' room in Adams School, one thing that people forgot to mention is that the on-air decks were all stacked together in the abandoned urinal. And Tony alluded to Bob's heartbeat of Guilford. And it was really something to see people lined up in the hallway waiting to go on with Bob and have their 10 or 15 minutes of the ability to talk about what they're doing. And I think that was the backbone of GCTV and continues to be the backbone of GCTV today, personalized most often by Tony Fabiano. But it was a pleasure knowing Bob and everybody else at GCTV.
John, do you want to say a few words?
No prepared statements, but I was just thinking about this recently. I meet a lot of people in this town, and you know, I don't know much of what they're involved in. Sometimes I talk to people and say, what sort of things are you guys involved in? Oh, nothing, I keep in a low profile. And it always just kind of amazed me. And Bob was this recruiter of volunteers. I've been involved with GCTV for, I don't know, I'm guessing 20-something years. So I'm not going to go back to the original setup and the stuff. I came in when we had this beautiful studio at Soundview with that wonderful set of stairs that you went up and things of that nature. But Bob always had a way of going, so I have an idea, you know, I'd like to pursue with you guys, or hey, what are you doing Saturday? I need to move these battery packs. Can you come and help me? So in terms of more recent memories, you know, we were looking around for a long time for a new studio, and this was all part of Bob's vision. That, and he wanted a mobile van, if you recall that. And unfortunately, we couldn't fulfill that one. But we were looking around all over for studio space, and Bob says, you know, I'd like you to come down and take a look at this space. And so I came down with him on a Saturday, and I walked in here and go, whew, you gotta be kidding me. Because it was totally gutted. It was just a mess in here. He says, no, imagine if we had this over here and we had this over here. So he had kind of mapped it all out in his head of what it could be. So I don't recall, it was like a 2 or 3 year process that we went through, just finding the space and then building out the space. And Bob would always had this way of just recruiting more and more volunteers to come down, and it was always, hey, John, what are you doing Saturday? Can you come help me with this? And so I was very much involved in helping him. And even as Bob was ill, he would still say, hey, you know, I'm going to be down there Saturday running wiring. Can you come down and help me? And what you don't see is what's above the ceilings and what's under the floor in terms of all the conduits and the wiring. And I'd be saying, Bob, how are we going to do this? He says, no, I got an idea. And he'd like pull out a Sawzall and start cutting something so we could run wiring down under the floor. So when I was in these recent conversations with folks about what do you do for the town from a volunteer standpoint, I think Bob was a big inspiration to me and probably to many others to get involved in things, because Bob is involved in so many things, Rotary and Bridge Club and the church and being the musician that he is, and tremendous character, so he's a terrific inspiration. And, a lot of people will come and live in this town, they'll enjoy the town, but they don't leave a mark on their town. So I think this is hopefully a lasting mark and tribute by dedicating this studio to Bob, that he has a long-term impact on the community. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to open up the microphone if anybody else has anything they want to say about Bob. You're certainly welcome. I was listening to what John said, and I've been in Guilford now about 10 years. And what happens, many of you probably have lived here much of your lives, but when you move here, you kind of gradually stick your toe in the water, and you get to meet a few people here, and you get to meet a few people there. And I got involved with GCTV, and then I continued to meet people in the community, and no matter what group of people I would meet, they'd go, "GCTV, do you know Bob?" And people would always smile. I was thinking about what was I going to say tonight, and that was the first thing that came to me. Whenever I would mention Bob's name to anybody in town, I'd get a smile. That smile might have meant any number of things, but Bob was such a personality and such a character that one way or another, he'd bring a smile, joyful or rueful, to people's faces. And I hope we're able to preserve some of that in the studio. So now I'd like to invite Bob's family up, and I'd like to invite Don to come up and introduce Bob's family. Don Hurto, also on our board of directors.
There was one little story I was going to tell. Bob also had another saying that he said on a number of occasions. We would spend many nights rehearsing, me as being a singer, and he was playing a keyboard, and I used to bring all the old 40s and 50s tunes in, and things that he had never even heard before. But we'd put them in and all that. And we really did quite a bit of music. I've got 1,000 songs that we've put in and over the years. I think about him every day. I miss him terribly every day. Every time I sit down at the keyboard, I think about him, There was one thing that he always used to say to me after during the time we were rehearsing. I'd say, "Bob, I think we ought to do that again." So we do it again. "That could be a little better, Bob. Let's try it again." And then he came up with this phrase all the time. It's good enough, Don. It's good enough. Anyway, I miss him. He was a great guy, very talented man, and I just miss him. I think everybody does. Mary Jane, his wife, Vander is here. You want the folks up front?
Yeah.
Okay. Mary Jane, please. And we've got Timmy, the oldest boy, is here. Timmy Vander. And guess we've got the new little baby here, Christopher and Christian's little guy. Isn't he something? He's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's all yours, David.
Okay. So we're going to make a presentation, but I'd like to get my fellow executive committee members up here if I can. Terry Kane, who's now our vice president. I must say that she was president when we made this move, and she had to deal with all the hard stuff, and then I just got to cruise in because of that hard work. John Otto was also president when we got the idea to move here. So these two had all the heavy lifting to do, and then I get to come in and just take the microphone. But I'm grateful to them for that. And Terry Fiandella, who is our treasurer, So not only does she write the checks for everything that you see around here, but she also helps in which everybody does at GCTV. She helps in all kinds of ways to pick up the slack as she did. Terry and Terry both are responsible for the refreshments that you're welcome to tonight. I want to say, too, before I forget, we have a kind of a Bob retrospective in the Lincoln Education Room. So I invite you to go in there and watch that. John Billings, who is, oh, you're out here, okay. And your wife Amanda's in the control room. And is Katie here? Oh, Katie's behind the camera. Katie is one of our interns. We have an internship program here now with high school students and college students, people who want to go into careers in television. They can come here, and Shannon and the rest of the board and other volunteers all school them in what it means to produce and broadcast a show. So I have a presentation, and I can't hand it to you, Mary Jane. I guess, who's going to, Tim, do you want to accept this? Okay. So this is, we have a plaque that will be going up outside the studio here, and it says, Guilford Community Television Studio in memory of Bob Vander for his immeasurable service and contributions to GCTV spanning over 40 years. And it's dedicated today. Let me give that to you. And then I'm not going to read this. We have it available in the education room. But this is pretty much a summary. Many of the people who spoke here sent me their remarks ahead of time, and we combined them in this summary of Bob's achievements. It's probably missing more than it says, but this is going to be placed on the wall as well. So we just deeply appreciate everything that Bob did. I don't know when he ever had a chance to see you guys, but I keep looking for him. We were talking earlier. No matter where Bob was, somehow he'd find a way to come to a GCTV meeting. If he was working in New Jersey, he'd leave early and he'd just try to get here on time. I understand that you were telling me, fathers don't hear this, but you know, he'd have a choice between choir practice and GCTV, and he said he would he'd do fine without the practice. So I was kind of looking around to see, since no matter where he came from, where he was, he'd always find a way to come to the meeting. I was kind of halfway looking around, expecting maybe he'd be here. And I think, like Mike said, I think he is. So I don't know if you guys have anything you'd like to say.
First off, I'd like to thank you all. Thank the town of Guilford for letting Bob have the great opportunity to run with his camera around town and start GCTV going. And then for the wonderful board members that he recruited, volunteers that he recruited. You know, we worked with you all somehow. Tony interviewing people on the green, Bob Shepard with the camera, following him around, Mike helping him out in the schools with the music programs, and just everywhere. I didn't do much of it, but every once in a while he would say, you know, we're short one person, can you just push the buttons and pan the camera and, you know, whatever. I said, I'll do the best I can. But my kids did a lot. The kids helped him out. Jennifer, Christopher, Kevin, even Lauren. They were always, you know, like, all right, Dad, I'll go, which is grateful. And I have to say, we don't get channels 17, 18, and 19 at home because we have Uverse. But he would always tell me, watch for this program at work. So when I worked, we had Comcast, and he'd say, can I come over there and watch GCTV on the TV there? And he would do that. And we have tapes galore in our house of selectmen meetings, of Board of Ed meetings, of school concerts, fairs, parades in town, and You know, someday it's just a great memory hall of memorabilia that we have. And it's all on VHS, like who has a VHS player today? You know, mine doesn't work anymore, but I have the tapes. So again, on behalf of Bob, and I know he's with all of you because you were close to him, and he was close to you. And you all just had a great relationship. Both he and I thank you.
Thanks so much, Mary Jane. I've got some good news for you. GCTV is on ATTU verse. Joel Parker's going to tell you how to.
Go to Channel 90. Go to Guilford. Go to Channel 99. Go to Guilford, Connecticut, and you run.
Is that new?
No.
No? That's always been there? Wow.
Over the last couple of years.
Yes, Bob just didn't have a time to tell you.
Overlooked.
Well, again, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Let me introduce the rest of the board. You've met some of them. Joel Parker's on our board. Lynn Haney. Mike, where's Mike Lorello? Mike is such a new board member that we don't even have a proper tag for him. He was going to take Mike Graziano's tag and white out the Graziano. Joe Goldberg, standing right in front of me, waving. I didn't think I needed a list, but obviously I was wrong. So thank all of you. And John Billings has volunteered. We're making a little documentary about Bob. And so if you were too shy to get up here, but you still have some memories or recollections you'd like to share, we're going to leave a camera on in here. John Billings is going to be here to coax your memories out of you if you like. And we invite you to join us in the education room and watch the best of Bob. And we hope that we'll get to continue to experience the best of Bob here in this studio. So thanks, all of you.